right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. This is Jeff over at Talent Reach, and this is the Unfair Advantage podcast, where I get to talk to go-to-market leaders and hiring managers across the states, sometimes beyond, and find out what their unfair advantage is all about when they're talking about growth, hiring, and other things that concern our very interesting marketplace that sort of revolves around tech, sales, hiring, things like that. I'm with a company called Talent Reach. We're a boutique recruiting agency here based out of Seattle, and really help solving some of those difficult problems that a lot of hiring managers are working on, especially these days, is like trying to navigate the hiring of the right people at the right time, considering that the layoffs, as well as a lot of the retention concerns that people are facing are extraordinarily challenging as people focus on some of the fundamentals. So if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. I get to kick it over to Marcus Knight here, who is the go-to-market leader for Cultured Perspective. I'm super excited to have you on, man. I don't even know where to start with your bio. It's like you read through it, and it's like this like resume of dreams. So talk to me a little bit about sort of, where you're coming from, where you've been, like I would, pitch what you're working on now. I'd like to hear, give me more than 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thanks, Jeff, for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, Marcus Knight, he, him pronouns here in Seattle, Washington. My background is go-to-market strategist. I've worked with a lot of early stage organizations and helping them raise or helping them scale their businesses. Right now, as the founder of Cultured Perspective, we are a go-to-market consultancy focusing on sales enablement, focusing on fractional CRO work, product market fit, things of that nature. And so we're working with anything from seed organizations all the way up to about Series C, depending on if you have a new product offering or if you're just trying to understand where your product will fit in the market and want to just get those first few sales going and putting in the right processes in place. So excited to be here.
Well, awesome. Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. Talk a little bit about sort of your history, where you come from. I think maybe you and I met back when you were at Textio, which was an interesting time. And then we have pandemic in between and all of that stuff. And you've done, I mean, like seriously, you're on like 6 boards and like talk to us
Yeah.
some of that path. What's your sort of history and where are you coming from?
Yeah, so started out in sales way back when in Chicago, and then worked at Groupon for a while. Then moved over to the Bay Area where I learned from Pika Zanji, a company called Talent Then, where we were acquired by Monster, being an early stage enterprise seller there. And then moved over to Textio. Man, it's been years ago now, almost 6 years ago, where I led up the revenue team at Textio. And it's been an interesting ride because we were able to hire a very diverse, eclectic group of individuals, and we were pretty successful with our revenue efforts. And then shortly, or I guess after about 5 years, I ended up starting my own consultancy, but then also ended up going to an organization called Shipium, where I was the revenue leader for a while there, but ultimately wanted to get back into consulting and thought that I can make more of an impact when I just touched a lot of companies that didn't really need a revenue leader to start, but just needed some strategy work, and so therefore we can lay the foundation for when they actually hire a revenue leader. And along the way, I've come across a lot of amazing sales talent in the Pacific Northwest, but globally as well. And so it's been really interesting to see kind of like what everyone's saying about the market these days, kind of, what the state of the economy, how sales is going to change, all those type of things. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's our agenda. We're going to talk all about all that
Yeah.
stuff. With Culture's Perspective, you get the opportunity to sort of really dig in and see a lot of different types of organizations. I mean, like you said, they're smaller, series seed to C. Anything in particular that you're really focused on developing, or people you like really want to talk to, or sort of what's your niche?
Yeah, so we've been working with a lot of founders that either have raised capital and don't have a sales team in place, and so they don't know what to do next, how to scale, or that they have a sales team, but they know that the sales team can be more efficient or just better producing, but they're not sure how. So we pretty much just come in and and do a diagnostic of the sales team, the tools that they're using, efficiency, like what's actually going on in the organization, and what is the actual goal, in the next 6 months, the next year, next 2 years. And then we try to lay the foundation down, A/B testing things along the way to making sure that it will actually work, and ultimately helping with things like, sales playbooks, helping with negotiation tactics, helping with hiring, adding the right type of talent into the organization, and ultimately putting them on this path of success and being able to either raise another round or whatever it is their goals actually are.
So you said something interesting about there's they might not have a sales team,
Mhm.
or maybe don't have the correct type of support. And earlier you mentioned sales enablement. Is there a particular element about that helps people stay on the rails? I mean, especially considering where we are now in the tech marketplace. Is like product led growth obviously is a popular approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that with sales enablement, there's just so many, like, you can really get bogged down with all of the things. So it really is honing in and really understanding where you want to go in the next quarter, next 2 quarters, et cetera. And then just like working towards that. So oftentimes what we hear from a lot of founders is, I need a revenue leader. I need a VP of sales or CEO or CRO, something along those lines. Most oftentimes they just need a strong seller. Like you can get by with an individual contributor who can lay the foundation, try a few things out, and ultimately from there, that will help you with filling in the rest of the gaps for the team. But starting with the revenue leader sometimes can be very detrimental to the business, because the revenue leader not only has to lay the foundation with the strategy in place, or putting the strategy in place, they also need to close the business initially to see if the test the market, see if it's actually working. And so what we've been able to do is come in and say, hey, use me as a fractional CRO for a while. I can work with you for 3 months, 6 months, longer, whatever the case may be. But let's lay the foundation of what is our strategy, and then let's execute on that strategy. And along the way, we're going to document, and we're going to make lead gen playbooks. We're going to make account executive playbooks, so that when we decide to scale, then all of these things will be in place for the revenue leader that you bring on full time, and for the sales team. They're not starting from scratch and having to build it all. They actually have a foundation to move from.
And you already start to get results without.
Exactly.
We see it all the time in our world in recruiting of people, at a certain size think I need to hire a VP of sales. And it seems to make
Mhm.
sense, but because of their size, a lot of times it's a little too soon. So your role makes sense. Can you give me sort of a specific example? You don't have to name names or anything, but sort of a specific situation that's fairly common in how it works.
Yeah, so work with a few organizations that have been in business for several years and are doing, let's call it a few million in revenue, and have a sales team in place, but they have no rhyme or reason or process on how they're actually getting it. Meaning getting sales. Meaning that they don't have pricing nailed down. It's just kind of like a guesstimate, if you will. So they don't have like a standardized like pricing that they would use, or a way in which they price, like a philosophy. And then there's also just low conversions, meaning that they have
Hmm.
a whole bunch of deals in the pipeline. You're looking at 100 deals in the pipeline, but when you really get down to it, maybe three of them are actually real. But you have to go through this whole process where you're asking a whole lot of questions on, why do you think this is going to close? What steps have you taken? And then once we get all of that information, then we just start to write up a whole new process. So meaning from when an inbound lead comes in, how we're doing discovery, like what does that discovery look like? What is the information that's needed, to moving the deal along to each stage within the sales pipeline, and making sure there is exit criterias in that pipe in those stages, so that okay, I can't actually say that this is 75% going to close if I haven't talked to the decision maker yet, if I haven't gotten buy-in from the budget, etc. So it's making sure that there's these set stop gaps that are in place. What we end up seeing is that, okay, now based off of that and the team that we have in house, we may need to hire additional talent. meaning that we may need someone that is an enterprise seller who has been doing sales at an early stage startup for a while to kind of like offset kind of what's going on, and also just allow the rest of the team to kind of like level up their skills and see and mimic what great behavior actually is.
And I think you touched on something that, maybe your unfair advantage you could share is managers all the time have to deal with, call it what you want, pipeline honesty or
Hmm.
dishonesty, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a common joke that most of the stuff in the pipeline is garbage, but yeah, I've got my quota. I've got to have stuff that's put in there.
Hmm.
What kind of how do you help those managers or even contributors overcome some of that? Because I mean, there's got to be pushback, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
oh no, this is not that it's dishonest, but it's a belief of like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, they said it was going to be a good deal. It's going to close when really the
Yeah.
percentages are pretty low. Like that's a huge challenge in my mind. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Yeah, so I try to just stick to the facts of the deal. And so if we take away our feelings, if we take away what people are saying, like what the buyer is saying or the prospect on the other end, and we just stick to the facts of what has actually happened and what needs to happen in order to get the deal closed, then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, let's take everything else out of the equation and let's just start from scratch. And mind you, what we end up finding out half majority of the time is that there are deals in there that can close like fairly quickly, and so we'll definitely work on getting those across the line. But now it's our chance to work backwards to see how many touches were made in order for that deal to close, who was involved in the deals in order for the deal to close, etc. So we work backwards to put the process in place, and then we say, great, now I understand that you've been operating like this for a while. Let's
Yeah.
try a new way because you're going to be much more successful, and in turn you're actually going to see higher paychecks, et cetera, things of that nature. And now you are more of a trusted advisor when it comes to your prospects and clients, because they know that you've done this for a while and they can see that, okay, you have a prescriptive way of doing things, and a prescriptive way of telling me how I should be buying your product or software. And that's what buyers want. They want to know how I'm supposed to buy your software. What does the buying process look like? What have you seen? So when you can guide them on what it looks like, what success looks like, and how to become a partner, then you're that much more credible.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that, and I want to. I'm going to circle back to that because I want to dig into some of the maybe the details. But you were talking about um, these behavior changes, right? Of
Hmm.
if you have somebody in, jump forward. So when you're hiring,
Hmm.
how do you hire for that? How do you? I
Yeah.
mean, look, and I'm going to warn you. Everybody only says, "Well, I want to hire somebody who's open to coaching, or I want to hire somebody who's
Yeah.
curious, or I want to hire," and those are great.
Hmm.
But if you're gonna say that, tell me how
Yes.
what's your method for getting to those intangibles? Because it's hard to define.
Yeah. So we've had clients that have had a tough time with their sales team being able to write like compelling emails, or just emails without grammatical errors, things of that nature, in order to like put their best foot forward. There's obviously softwares like Grammarly and things like that that you can use, but we also start to screen for that in the interview process now. So we're telling our clients like, hey, you want to bring on an SDR or an AE or an enterprise AE or a revenue leader, they should be able to communicate in a certain way effectively to get their point across. So there is a written exercise that we love to tell our clients that they should do. And it's mostly just to understand, how can people elaborate on certain topics. How messy is your room? How clean is your room? Things of that nature. Just how are you elaborating and describing the situation? And then from there, when we move into like an actual interview or an interview, like a take home assignment, things of that nature, we don't want them to do work for the client, for the company, but we do want to put them in a real world scenario so that we can kind of see how they're going to engage with the current situation. So if it's an account executive, for instance, I may paint the picture that you're walking into a team that the team is still pretty junior. They're not sure exactly how to like close deals and how to like share best practices and feedback. How would you handle that? Let's role play that in the interview itself and let me know exactly what you would do or you come in difficult situations where there may be some animosity because you have more experience and you're much more credible or accredited than some of the other people and internally. How do you handle that situation? Let's role play that out.
Mhm.
And what I'm trying to understand is, and I'm throwing these curveballs every once in a while at them to see like how they handle it. How are they handling themselves on their feet, and can they stand the pressure, and are they level headed for the most part? Again, it's not like it doesn't work for every single person and every single company, but it's a framework that we try to do, and then we just have multiple discussions around it to see if we can actually frame it up the right way.
So do you have specific techniques or questions that you'll use to sort of get those curveballs, to satisfy your needs? Because obviously, the cost of a failed hire is,
Yes.
and everybody knows that, but it's hard, like,
Yeah.
to get into an interview process and say, well, I want to try to, because you're going to have somebody who's run their writing through Chat GPT or
Yep.
Grammarly, and so it's going to look good. At least it should. I
Hmm.
mean, it's a pretty good indicator. You shouldn't hire somebody if, these days, but or if that's important to you. I realize that's
Yeah.
not always the thing. But, like, what are some of those questions? What are some of the things, the specifics that you leverage that satisfy, and how does it satisfy your gut to say, okay, I bridge that gap. I feel good. This person's going to be successful.
Yeah, so in the written exercise, depending on which role it is, things along the lines of like, tell me of the best invention that you've come across, or what is a great technology or what's a technology that you really believe in and why. So I just want to get an understanding of the writing from that standpoint. There's more questions like that. When we were actually interviewing and talking to, say, like a enterprise AE, we'll give them an assignment of, like, something that they feel comfortable selling. So whatever it is, whatever their last product was, whatever they feel comfortable selling, but we're trying to get them to do the research of how are they going to get in front of the right decision makers, what research goes in front of that, what are the steps that are going to be taken in order to get the deal across the line. Like, are they doing project plans? Are they controlling the situation? And then from there, we always there's I'm operating as a decision maker when I'm in the role playing
Mhm.
mindset. So therefore, I'll basically just like start to throw objections at them about our business and really make it about the client's business so that they can get an understanding. So yeah, that's great, but here at the company that I'm working at, we have three AEs. We're not doing very well as far as understanding what metrics we're trying to track. So we don't have all the information that you're looking for, and you don't have a revenue leader yet. How are you going to get this information? How are you going to make this a successful transaction? And so by asking questions like that, they have to stop and pause and think about, okay, this is a real world scenario. How can I map to this and make sure that we will be successful? Now,
Mhm.
there's a lot of other questions, a lot more questions like that I answer, but it's dependent on what the client actually needs, like from a salesperson standpoint at that time.
Getting more into, like,
Mhm.
so yeah, what's really important to the prospect, to the client, as opposed to the
Mhm.
the right glossy answer.
Yes, and then the other piece that we're always evaluating on is culture, adding culture and value. So, um, while there are a lot of great salespeople out there, do they lead with empathy? Do they show how to be like a good teammate, a good collaborator, things of that nature? So we're always throwing all kinds of questions out to them to see if they can respond to it, and what they've how they've worked in the past in different roles, and are they adaptable to change.
There's a huge conversation right there, because humans are can perform certain tasks, but then culture, quote unquote, is a
Hmm.
very difficult thing to nail down. I mean, do you feel like, what's your take on, can you engineer a culture? Do you need to hire people who simply adapt well enough so that it's a evolving culture? Is it both?
Hmm.
You know, what sort of advice would you have for somebody who's like, because everybody also, again, will say, oh, we want to hire, we have a great culture, but
Yeah.
do you? It's hard.
I think that's the first thing is like, I think it's all the above that you mentioned, but I think that it starts with the leadership team within the organization. So you got to take a hard look at the leadership team and understand how are they operating, how are they engaging with the staff, and how are they conveying goals that they're trying to get across. Does it come off as like dictatorship? Does it come off as like, how is that happening? And then that is really my kind of like my responsibility to have those tough conversations with the executive team. I start with one-offs, but just like, hey, did you know that you could get more productivity if you actually treated people a little bit better? And everyone, of course, knows that, but it's like, let me give you examples of how that should look. Doing things like that, also helping organizations or helping founders write messaging to the team that shows a little bit more vulnerability, just shows that they are human and just not here for the production of the services, etc. So that's where it starts, and then when we get into the interview process for the candidates, then we just carry that all the way through. So making sure that we are asking questions around how did you work with different diverse backgrounds, how have you engaged in difficult situations? What if you have a manager that you don't like and get along with? What are you kind of the courses of that you would take to try to either kind of help that relationship, or is it something that you would need to walk away from? So we ask a lot of like situational questions, and then we just get into like what we're trying to set the culture to be within the organization. So hey, this is where the CEO has made this stance. Do you agree with going along for the ride? It's going to be very bumpy. There's going to be a lot of things that change. It's forever evolving, but you're here to add to that. So it's not like we want you to be a passenger in this. We want you to actually come in and add value to our culture and push back on us when you think that we aren't doing it properly. And depending on how they respond, engage, will tell us a lot.
So it sounds like you really empower or let
Mhm.
candidates know that they have a level of empowerment that might not exist in a large or most organizations.
Yeah,
That that's
absolutely.
pretty that seems pretty critical.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the one thing that I think about is that, especially if there is an early stage organization, it is really open field. Like you can really do whatever you want. So it's just a matter of how would you like to lay the groundwork down, and how are you going to build on top of that. And so if you're getting candidates to buy into your philosophy that like, yes, I'm in this with you, and we're building this together, and it's going to be bumpy, but I'm along for the ride. I think that I think that those organizations will be successful. I've seen it time and time again where some of our clients have really um, done this kind of culture shift over working with us for 6 or 9 months or whatever, and they're like, wow, at first we didn't really know if this was something that we really cared about, but we were like, okay, well, we're paying you to show us this, so let's try it out. And now they're seeing like amazing results, and they're like, wow, we're still just getting started. We're not very long in this process at all.
So define some of those results. Like, what are they seeing?
Mhm. Yeah, so they're seeing a collaborative environment when it comes to the sales culture, where it historically wasn't that. Like every sales rep that was in the org was very siloed and very much in competitive mode. And competition is good. I love
Sure.
competition, but there has to be a way that you are coming back to the group to share what you've done, like what has worked, what hasn't worked. We're doing a lot of knowledge sharing. We're doing a lot of critiquing each other. So making sure in pipeline reviews, we're asking, making sure that like all of the i's are dotted, all the t's are crossed. And then from there, we're also just making sure that everyone is adding adding advice when it comes to hard situations for deals specifically. And before this, that was not happening. What we saw like the results that we saw were conversion rates went through the roof. Like they saw deals get through the sales funnel extremely fast. And when I say extremely fast, I mean about 30 days faster than prior.
Wow.
And yeah, which was it was shocking to me to see. Um, they saw that they started to document all of the things that they were experiencing and sharing it more broadly with the sales organization. So now there is this bank of knowledge that people can pick from. They started to challenge people's sales reps deals within the pipeline review and say, yeah, I don't think that's actually at the stage that you think it is in. I think that you need XYZ in order for it to get there. That's without leadership being involved. So leadership
Wow.
no longer is involved doing that. We, like me operating as a leader for a while, just help them navigate those conversations. And I sit in the room, but I just take a step back and let them run the pipeline. And then they're also sharing failures or I'm sorry, learns and wins. And they're doing that publicly, like, oh man, I really botched this sale, and this is all the steps that happened and why I think I botched it. Would love to see what you all think I could have done differently to gain that back, and what do you think I can do now to at least smooth things over. So those are some of the things that we've seen from our clients, and it's been really awesome because our team is pretty excited about it.
That's pretty outstanding because really what you're saying is you can draw a straight line from the recruiting process for culture
Hmm.
and empowerment into results. You can see it.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
that's incredible. Like, anybody who's listening would be, well advised to pick your brain more about, like, how to bring those people on, because that's the dream, isn't it? Everybody's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we have a great culture. Everybody loves working here, but let's get to the current, in sales, environment. There's a ton of turnover, not just because of layoffs, right? We people aren't sticking around because it's still a robust hiring market.
Yeah.
You know, so what are you seeing, in terms of the marketplace in general? Just start wide.
Yeah. So I'm seeing that sales reps are, well, if I start with the sales reps first and like it within organizations, they're getting antsy to do things differently, whether that's on their own, whether that's just a different change of environment, where they think that, grass is greener somewhere else. But I have seen a shift in that. Or they feel like they can get more money somewhere, etc. We're seeing sales folk that are kind of demanding more. Not a bad thing. If
Mhm.
But we're also seeing that um, founders are trying to navigate this situation, and are sometimes are a little bit more like fish out of water. They're like, oh my goodness, like my sales reps are demanding so much from me and the organization that maybe am not willing to give. And what we come in and say is like, well, maybe that sales rep needs to go somewhere else to actually be more successful. Like it's okay if a sales rep has outgrown the business. That is fine. But then on the flip side, the founders need to understand what is it that they need in a sales rep. So if this sales rep leaves, what are you backfilling for? What are the key traits that you're looking to fill? And you need to fill for that. Um, Also, just seeing that there's a lot of companies that are still hiring right now. Like there are a lot of great sales talent out there that, out in the market. Number one, there's a lot of companies that are hiring. It's just about what is your actual need. I mentioned before how a lot of the companies are saying that they need revenue leaders, or they may even say that they need like an enterprise sales executive, or enterprise account executive, and but the product isn't really proven yet. So
Mhm.
in my mind, I'm like, yeah, maybe you could start with, an SDR and an AE, or or something along those lines, and like let's prove that out. I'm also seeing that are people are willing to learn what they like. Sales reps are willing to learn what they need to in order to like excel their career. So if they don't have, say, strategy experience, they're looking to get into some kind of class, some kind of boot camp, whatever, to gain that experience to make them that much better. I'm seeing like most of the people that we come across in sales are taking some kind of classes at right now. Like they're just like, we need to level up our skills even more, which is great. I think that what you're going to get in a few months is just some amazing talent in the workplace. And then ultimately we are seeing some organizations who are, laying off and things of that nature, but they still have revenue goals and targets. And so how do they work with a skeleton team? That's where we see where, the consultancy comes in for a while. We may be able to kind of bridge the gap for a time frame until you get to, you're able to hire again. And from that standpoint, we really make it clear that like this is a temporary fix. This is a band-aid. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
we're not here for the long haul, and you are going to need to hire, internal talent. But for the time being, we may be able to get you along the way until we can start that interview process and pull the levers to know that it's time to bring in new talent.
Yeah, I think maybe Twitter could use your help about now. Do you,
I,
I mean, it's like who's keeping the doors open, right? Do you have
I
it?
don't know. Twitter's a mess right now.
Oh yeah, I saw there was a few more. Anyway, do you work with the team? Do you sort of come and airdrop in and say, okay, I've got people that are on standby that fill certain key roles, or yeah, tell me how that works.
Yeah, so it depends on the client themselves, and what their needs are. Like sometimes they just need I'll come in as like a fractional CRO. With that happening, I do have at least two other supporters that work with me, and that's just because they're closer to closing deals than I've been, or they're better at lead generation than I am, or things of that nature. So they can come in and like help diagnose the problem a little bit more, and start to put together the playbooks for me while I'm working with the executive team primarily, and then doing a lot of the training sessions along the way. So we work in pods of around 3 or 4 to make sure that we are covering all bases and that you're getting multiple points of view. I may tell you one way, and I've had this happen several times where some of my consultants have been like, actually, I do things a little bit differently. I'm like, yeah, I haven't done lead generation in a long time, so you probably do have a better way of doing it than me. So,
So
which is
okay,
great.
wait, let me stop there because what has changed with lead gen over the past, let's call it 9 to 12 months, between the layoffs and
Hmm.
the shift in the tech market with generative AI. Of course, we can't leave that out of the
Hmm.
conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
there's something like how many, like 900 different sales enablement platforms or plugins or tools that you can use. I mean, literally, like in the 900s.
Yes.
Like what what's happening? Like what's changed, and where are we pointed?
I do see that we have for lead gen folks, it is much more augmentation of their role, not automation, but augmentation, which is
Right.
good. I think that is a great thing. I think there's a lot of tools and softwares out there to pick from, but I think that what you need is just understanding the manual process that you're trying to do first, and then you can augment some of that with these different softwares. What we're seeing though is that um, messaging needs to be shorter. Like I mean, I when I was doing lead gen way back when, like I used to write these almost like novels, if you will, just giving out a whole bunch of information. and and what we're learning now is that like no, like a few sentences, a video, something that's like tweetable, if you will, is resonating more with organizations. There can be a few sentences and a video or something like that, and move on. Which is very different than what I'm used to. And then we're also seeing that the more personable that lead gen folks are, the higher the success rate, the response rate that we're seeing. And
Sure.
it does take, multiple engagements, whether it's phone calls, emails, whatever, multiple engagements and different forms. I'm seeing a lot more of the cadences being done, not just on email and phone, LinkedIn, and other areas as well, just to get to the right decision maker buyer. And but what I've seen that has been successful has been majority of like video or very short sentences. Mhm.
So yeah, so in our world, our distracted world, even shorter messaging.
Yes, yeah, which is
Uh,
crazy for me to say, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting people's attention. There's so much noise out there. I mean, I have this feeling that you know I can go write a sequence of 9 emails on
Mhm.
using ChatGPT in about 2 seconds. I mean, like, what does that
Mhm.
do for an SDR or an
So
organization that might not need 10
yeah,
people? I mean, or is that just sort of a fear? Because I realize, like, we're caught up in the news cycle, and so maybe it's
yeah,
like, well,
yeah.
when the tide recedes, we'll be like, yeah, yeah, no, we still need people.
I think it's still more of a fear. I don't think that ChatGPT is quite there yet from a human like from the personal standpoint. I think it can get you pretty far, say 50% or 40% of the way of the messaging. But I think that that human element needs to be there, and that personalized touch needs to be there. I've actually played around with ChatGPT a bit just to see if it would help me with sequences and things like that, and it still came off as like not personal, like more robotic, if you will. And
Sure.
I get it. You can keep altering it to get better and better. I understand, but I think that right now salespeople have the distinct advantage. Like I said, I think that video is probably the thing that really stands out. Like if you can send a 30-second video to someone in an email about what you're trying to convey, that can go further than a chat gpt a few sentences, etc., that
Yeah.
sound more generic or more like everybody else, because still the name of the game is you want to sound different than everybody else, like you want to stand out. So I don't
Yeah.
think that chat gpt is helping in that aspect. It's pulling together a lot of great information, but you're sounding more the same.
Well, arguably, it's an opportunity for someone willing to do something like a video or more personal stuff
Hmm.
because the noise level is raised. Because if anybody can go create a sales sequence in 60
Yep.
seconds, it's all going to
Yep.
be that much more noise.
Hmm.
Interesting. All
Absolutely.
right,
Yep.
so shift over. What about the CS side of things? Like, I read a lot about how companies right now are focusing more on retention and
Hmm.
customer support. Um, any major shift there, or is it similar to what you've seen in the past?
I'll say that there's been a shift. I think that what I've seen over the past, call it 9 months, is what you described, is that there is a hyper focus on retention and making sure the customer client experience is just like top notch, and making sure that you are communicating along the way what's going on, so that you are leaving no doubt that they will renew, they will expand, etc. So I'm seeing more touches from CS to their customer base with more like pertinent information, and just showing, just really kind of like posturing that like they are the knowledge expert in this area, and they made and the customer made a good decision by moving forward with the product. I
Okay.
think that from a leadership CS leadership standpoint, I have seen the numbers be pretty in line. Like we saw the drop off initially with a lot of products and things like that, but I see it being more stable and actually kind of on the upward trajectory with some of the customers that we're dealing with right now. But I can't speak too much on it just because I think it's still early. But yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's an element of on the CS side of actually now executing and doing,
Hmm.
demonstrating what they've been saying they do
Yes.
for a
Yes.
long time. And I'm not saying that customer support is terrible everywhere, but we all know, we all have our stories.
Yeah.
So, all right, put on your consultant's hat and let's share some of the insight that you've got about where are we going? What are you optimistic about the next 6 9 months in the tech space, especially as it comes to go to market roles? Um, you know, what's the marketplace going to look like? Are we going to see an upswing, a return to 2021, or are we going to see more of the same? Talk to me a little bit about what people can do to sort of to win,
Mhm.
in 2023.
Yeah, I think that we will see an upswing probably in about 6 months, 6 months from now or so. We'll start to see, more people being hired in the tech space again. I think that what you're going to get is more informed individuals based off of, the classes that they're taking, et cetera, just the leveling up of their skill set. And so they'll
Mm,
be able to do more. I do think that the tech industry is making some pivotal changes though, from a standpoint of like, how do you operate with a leaner team and still drive some great results? And so TBD on what that looks like, but I do see that there is some kind of shift happening there. I mean, we're going through that right now with all the layoffs, et cetera. But long term, I think that's the question, is like, how are we going to operate more lean and still get great results from that?
and is that sorry, let me just jump in real quick, though. Is that 6 months sort of upswing, is that because capital will return, or is that because end users are upping their tech budgets?
Mhm.
What makes you optimistic that's gonna happen? What's that lift? Where's that lift coming from?
Not sure about the capital piece. I don't think that's the thing. I think it would be more so around the lines of like, organizations will have more budget to purchase, product softwares that will make them more efficient. So from that standpoint, I can see like with more revenue coming into the market, then you'll see more salespeople being able to, fulfill those roles and to help with that.
Mhm,
That I don't think it's a capital thing. I'm still curious to see how that all plays out long term. But from a revenue standpoint, you'll see companies saying, "Okay, we operated this way for the past year or whatever the case may be, and now we're in a decent spot where we can throw more efficiency resources out at some of these problems, and therefore they'll be
mhm.
willing to spend."
So, yeah, so really what we're just kinda going through a transition. We're gonna be companies are
Hmm.
becoming leaner, they're becoming smarter. It's funny because, again, if you'd asked a go-to-market leader 6 months ago, they'd say, "Yeah, yeah, we already do that. We're already leaner
Yeah,
and smarter." Right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
it really seems like it's like necessity is like, "Okay, we're gonna actually do that." Uh, Talk to me a little bit about sort of what you would advise candidates who might be looking or,
Mhm,
staring down the barrel. I mean, like, what you mentioned upskilling, right?
mhm,
Maybe be more specific about some of the things you see that are helping, sort of, make resumes pop. Maybe some of the things that
mhm.
maybe you're seeing happening in interviews. What kind of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, so it depends on the role that they're going for, but let's say that they are an AE or an enterprise AE, for instance. Like, I think it'd be great to have more sales enablement skill set, to also have more revenue architecture skill set.
Meaning what?
More like RevOps, like type RevOps type opportunity. So like understanding how to understanding how deals are converting through the pipeline, understanding like how you're going to, like, what's the input in order to get to the output, like those type of things. And I think that there's sales reps that do that now, but I think that the more that we are in this, layoff, downturn, et cetera, like getting that skill set underneath your belt is going to be very valuable, because now what you've turned into, if you were an enterprise AE and you have that, you've turned into pretty much a stretch growth role of like a revenue leader, if you will,
Mhm.
like makeshift. So if you're going to an early stage organization, now you're like, okay, I'm an enterprise AE, but I can stretch into revenue leadership for a while or for a time frame, before we have to bring on a mentor or something like that. So
Okay.
things of that
Okay.
nature. If you're SDR level, same thing. Like working on your pitching, working on data analytics as well, and then really trying to understand, like, and even management, because what I've seen with some of my clients is that they're still looking for SDR managers. They're looking for, and they can't find them. They can find a ton of SDRs. They haven't been able to find a lot of managers, if you will. So,
Okay.
those are some of the areas that I'm like, okay, if SDRs can start to take these classes, and one of the areas that I really, or one of the learning platforms that I like to use a lot is Sassy Sales Leadership. Matt Cameron and his team do a really great job of training folks, ICs to
What I'm
revenue
gonna
leaders.
throw that up here. What is that?
Sassy Sales Leadership.
Like SASS, SAAS?
Yep.
Why?
Here. Yep. SAASY, sales leadership, and I'll put it in the chat here too.
Okay,
Um,
cool. I'll throw that up real quick. That's pretty cool.
yeah,
Yes.
and so for them for specifically, they're offering like free scholarships for people that have been affected by layoffs, etc. And so you're able to get these classes, these trainings in sales management and leadership. You're able to get it for free when it's cost anywhere from like 12 to like 3 grand typically. So
Nice.
1,200 to 3 grand. So and this is one that I've had a lot of I've recommended to a lot of folks, and they've came back with high praises for the work that they do over there. Other than that, I also think that it's important to look outside of the sales org. If you are a candidate trying to get into or looking for a new role, look outside of the sales org and build your skill set there as well. I mean, marketing goes hand in hand with sales. So if you learn any of the marketing components, that'd be great. What does lightweight coding look like? What does things of that nature look like that can actually help you out when you are back at in the role? So
That's fantastic. And does that help as a hiring manager to look at somebody's resume and realize, maybe they got laid off or they've been out of work for a while or even jumped around a bit, but they've been spending their time, you know,
it,
investing in
yeah,
themselves? Is that
in
speak
my
a
mind,
lot?
yes.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because it's like they are they are they are honing in on a craft, right? And so they are sharpening their skills, they like over and over again, and they are continuous learners. What that tells me as a hiring manager is like, oh, like if in organizations, I am always looking for people who are continuous learners. And if they are doing those type of things already, then it's like, okay, great. They already get it. Like they're going to be learning a lot from the day to day, but they've already put in some work to say like, yes, they've proven that this is who I am. This is what I do.
Mhm.
And I think ultimately they'll be wildly successful in time by doing that.
Well, it works both ways, I guess. You're actually getting better because you're improving yourself, and then it looks good
Yeah,
because you're able to like operate at a higher level. So that's gold.
and
I really
and
appreciate that.
and the companies like you can be a utility player within the organization, and that's the other part
Mhm.
of it. So
Mhm.
so for instance, if you were in sales but you did all these other skill sets, rev ops, etc., you could assume a new role based off of learning that skill set, and you're that much more valuable to the organization.
That's great. That's great. And then, of course, at a higher level, you got things like Revenue Collective. I guess it's called Pavilion now. Anything
Pavilion,
else like
yeah.
at that level?
Yeah, so I like Pavilion a lot. They have their CRO school, they have CCO school, they have a lot of great um trainings, and I think that it's a great resource for frontline managers all the way up to the executive level, and actually even ICs as well. But I'm saying like from that
Yeah.
standpoint, there's a lot of resources on if you are a first time frontline manager, how to do your job, how to level up your skill set, what should you be thinking about in your role. So even if you're, let's say you're laid off right now, but you were a frontline manager, first time frontline manager, and you're trying to get better, there's all kinds of mentorship that they have within their organization, so you can talk to other revenue leaders and get a perspective. They host a whole lot of training sessions, and they have a lot of like templates for you to like use and start from, which I think is just awesome. I wish I would have that would have been there when I first started out. So
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'll throw that up there as well because that's a really great resource. And we work with them on the recruiting side, and they're fantastic. Like, they're tons of great people out there. All right, well, close this out. Anything you want? Anything we did? Anything I missed? I'm sure.
oh man.
That's a longer conversation. Anything
Yeah.
really burning on your mind? I missed a lot. I'm sure.
I'd say that I like the work that you all are doing at Talent Reach. I think it's phenomenal. I think that you all are very thoughtful in your approach on like placing candidates. I've utilized you all in the past with finding individuals, and I think that yeah, just keep doing that. Also uh yeah, I think that also a lot of great organizations that are hiring that haven't put a lot of roles out there yet. And so I'm encouraging those companies to post those roles in more places where they can be seen. Oftentimes I do get a lot of like
Yeah.
LinkedIn messages of like, hey, do you know people that can fill this role? And the first thing I do is like, I have a massive network. I'm sure I do, but let me pass it on over to Jeff, or let me pass it on over to someone else who's specializing in that. You'll probably get faster results that way. And so overall, I think that we are going to be in a good spot when it comes to tech sales in general. I think that we're just in this period of learning, development, and just and also just like taking a step back over the past 15 or so years and just seeing like what has transpired and how do we move forward.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. All right, I'm going to throw up some contact information for you. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love for people to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
You.
If organizations are looking for consultancy or fractional CRO work, fractional CRO, I'm happy. We're taking on clients, so yeah.
Yeah, right on. And yeah, we'll have to talk about this LinkedIn. You can take off those numbers at the end of your LinkedIn.
That's how lazy I am right now. No, I'm joking.
That's how busy. That's how busy you are.
Yes, yes, busy, busy. Yes, I will be working on that this week.
Awesome, Marcus, man. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been amazing. I hope you come back.
No, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to come back.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.